Competitive.
Already ready? Nobody's used to hearing that. Good evening. It's the December 2nd Village Council meeting for the Village of Yellow Springs. Judy, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Winthrop.
Yes.
Asplund?
Yep.
Sims?
Here.
Pausch?
Yes.
McQueen?
Yes.
Also present is Interim Village Manager Kent Bristol.
And we have an extremely important piece of business to start the evening. Our illustrious mayor is awaiting his swearing in. And Mr. Bristol will be doing that.
All right. Deja vu all over again.
Yes. Are we swearing or affirming?
Oh, either way you want to do it, I will.
Please raise your right hand, sir. I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and will obey the laws of the United States
and will obey the laws of the United States
and of the state of Ohio.
and of the state of Ohio.
That I will, in all respects,
That I will, in all respects,
observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs. And that I will, in all respects,
that I will, in all respects,
observe the provisions of the charter
will observe the provisions of the Charter
and ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and the ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of mayor.
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of mayor.
Congratulations.
Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to all of you, new and old.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Forward.
Next time, I need my sunglasses. Good luck. Enjoy.
Take care.
Thank you.
If anybody has any cell phones or electronic devices, please turn those down. First, we have announcements. Council, I'll start with staff. Any announcements from staff?
Yes, I'd like to introduce our new finance director. Melissa, would you please stand up? This is Melissa Van Zandt. Melissa lives between Clifton and Cedarville and is a regular visitor to Yellow Springs. She is, I'm not sure of her actual title, she's the business manager for the Wright State University Police Department, has been for several years. And Jerry Sims sat in on the interviews with me, and we were just blown away by Melissa's talent and ability, and look forward to working with her.
Thank you. Look forward to working with y'all, so I'm really excited to start on Monday.
Well, and you started at the busiest time of the year. Year end, is getting that budget together, so it's, hopefully it'll be easier, it'll be easy for all of us. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
Yeah, actually, two announcements. One is, some of you may have noticed that Paul Abendroth has made it so that village council meetings can be seen online. And right now, we have a temporary fix, which is using YouTube. And the subsite for the community access is cap.yso.com. And if you click on, what does it say? It says Village Council Meetings on the Internet. Those are going to be posted at least within 48 hours after our meetings. So if you don't have Channel 5 access, you can see them online. And eventually we hope to have a more permanent fix on the council page. The second thing is I wanted to mention something that the Human Relations Commission has put together for this Saturday. Which is part of their mission to basically work against discrimination. And this is, they're showing a movie at the Little Art Theater at 2 and 4:30, which is called Shooting Beauty. From 6 to 8, they're going to have a community potluck, and this is all about basically recognizing issues related to disabilities, and it's a great program. In between the two, they're going to have a panel discussion at the Little Art, so I encourage everyone to attend.
Thanks, Brian. Any other council members with announcements? I will mention briefly, but then we'll talk about it later, that this Thursday at At the First Presbyterian Church, we will be doing, the McKee Group will be doing a forum on the Center for Business and Education. Just for the people who are only watching at the beginning, I'll make sure it gets in there, but we'll have a little bit more discussion on that later in the agenda. Any audience members with announcements? Thank you. Okay, we will do a review of the minutes from the November 18th meeting. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3.
A typo on seventh sentence that starts with Phyllis Schmidt. I think at the end of that line, it should be given rather than give, given the recent attrition.
Page 4. And page 5. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Review of the agenda. Are there any changes anybody would like to suggest to the agenda?
Yeah, I would like to add one item. Linda Radulski is going to be here to talk about an HRC project, Human Relations Commission, the Rain Barrel project. So if we could add that to new
Okay.
business.
New business, okay. Anything else? Okay.
Only that I did not put on the agenda that you had an update on the C Street project from Emily Seibel. That came in late on Wednesday, and I got the packet out early, so that...
And that was basically under petitions and, okay.
Right, I think that Kent's planning to address that. I just wanted to make sure you...
I don't think I ever got a copy of it.
It should have been right in your packet, because it got into the packet.
Not in the electronic packet.
Maybe it didn't. It was online. It was in the online version.
Oh, well, maybe I downloaded one that was, I downloaded the one from Judy.
Okay.
But I thought that was more full, more complete.
No, I sent one out and then said that Patty'd catch it up, so she had a couple things she added.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
It wasn't clear.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was confused.
Do you?
All right, well, I can do the two petitions that were in the packet I read, and if somebody wanted to summarize Emily's, that would be great. But that Kelly and Wayne Goulden wrote regarding tourist activities and impact, particularly, they wrote regarding the tourist activities and impact, particularly regarding the events that we have on the lawn of the Bryan Center, concerned about noise and that it has grown bigger than just the street fair in years past. And Glenn Courtright wrote that we should support the CBE. He's the, does the bugs out there. His company is called?
EnviroFlight.
EnviroFlight, thank you.
And, well, I think Emily's was about the Cemetery Street project, and Kent will address that, I think, in his manager's report.
I'd like to comment on one of the letters. Is that appropriate? The letter regarding the tourist activities and impact. I also had a citizen come up to me recently regarding some of the musicians that play downtown and the noise that is created by that, and how this particular person said that it was difficult to actually sort of sit down and have a conversation sometime. So it seems to fit into this issue of, given we are a tourist community, I mean, that's part of our economic strategy, and yet there are some downsides to that, and noise and that sort of activity can be a nuisance. I don't know how we address that, but I do just want to mention that's been said by other people, and I don't know where to go from there, but I do want
It's
to put that on
my
the
understanding that there may be a petition presented related specifically to the amplification with some of those musicians, kind of creating and even amplifying, obviously, and creating more of a noise and intrusion. So, yeah, I mean, it's clearly an issue. I don't know how to, if it's something we want to take up it might be something we want to address when we're doing goals. We'll do goals. That'll be probably something we do the beginning of the year, and it might be something we want to address at that point.
It could possibly be something that HRC could help us think about.
I think maybe also the Arts Commission, because a lot of these events are around the arts, so, it seems to me that it requires some research, maybe some input from staff. I know that, there's more and more things for staff to be involved with also, so maybe it's a collaboration project.
What about the chamber? Would it
Well-
be a topic of discussion for the chamber?
I mean, if it would be, then I would recuse myself.
I mean, a discussion at the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, usually how would we do more, but, I mean, it's clearly an important point for them. Would we have it? We actually have, we address issues that come up and things that are sent to us. But again, that's being addressed as the chamber and as an organization that facilitates those kinds of things. Representing the citizens, representing the village, that's a totally different viewpoint that would need to be addressed here. I would say that someone from the chamber, other than myself, should be involved in that.
Two things I guess I'll just mention. One is, I know time may be an issue with some of these events, how late the music goes, and the other main thing I heard was the bass level. So, so anyway, so I think it's fixable, yeah.
Right, okay. Well, let's move on to legislation, public hearings and legislation. First reading of ordinance 2013-27, transferring Glade Forest Cemetery property to Miami Township and declaring an emergency.
Okay, and that should have said reading of, because there will be one reading of this. It actually needs to be filed tomorrow. Whereas the Forest Glen Cemetery Association, the association or cemetery, dissolved the association, and Miami Township, the township, has undertaken the operation of the cemetery pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 517.27. And whereas some of the land within the cemetery is located within the corporate limits of the village, and whereas the cemetery property is required by order of the Greene County Court of Common Pleas, attached here as Exhibit A, to be transferred to Miami Township for the reasons that the township is responsible to take care of, keep and repair, hold, treat, and manage the cemetery as required by Ohio Revised Code Section 517.01 through 517.32, and whereas the court ordered Miami Township and the village to record the deed attached here as Exhibit B on or before December 6th, 2013. Now therefore the Council for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, Greene County hereby ordains that Section 1, the village manager shall cause the deed to be recorded to comply with the order of the court. Section 2, this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure immediately necessary to preserve the public interest and for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the village, and more specifically, to have a chain of title that accurately reflects the Miami Township owns the cemetery for the purposes of the township's present and future operation of the cemetery, and to comply with the order of court.
Can I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
So we talked about this very briefly at the last meeting. The ordinance really pretty much spells it out. This is, earlier this year, the township did take over operation of the cemetery and ownership of the cemetery. A portion of the older section that is adjacent to Cemetery Street is village property, and it was decided, just to make it easier for operations, that we would deed that property over to the township so that they would have ownership of all of it and make it easier. They do a great job of operating the Clifton Cemetery, and clearly they're doing a wonderful job already. If you've seen the addition, or all of the work that they've done on the east side of 68 on the new section, it's really wonderful. So it's just, in some respects, a housekeeping measure just so that the operation of the cemetery continues. Kent, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, we didn't originally own that, I don't believe. I think when the Cemetery Association stopped functioning, that their control, their ownership reverted automatically to the township, and the part that was in the village accrued to the village.
Okay.
I don't think we had to take any action. It was just sort of an automatic default type of thing. So we came into ownership of something we hadn't had any interest in
I see,
before.
okay.
So it's going to be a short, we're flipping it, I guess.
For major profit.
Yes. Council, any questions or comments? This is a public hearing. Any comments from citizens? I'll open the public hearing. Seeing and hearing none, I'll bring it back to council table. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sims.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Asklund.
Yeah.
Winthrop.
Yes. Thank you. Next is the hearing of previously tabled resolution 2013-43, retaining services of bond counsel.
So,
We actually have
Do we
the
need-
check signers thing.
Oh, is that the next one?
It's the next one. I don't care when it comes up, just as long as we don't overlook it.
Okay, I know I had it, but it's like, it's next, it's
is.
after these
Right.
next two.
It is.
Oh.
No, it's first. It's
Is
because
it?
it's 26. Somehow it got,
you received.
Oh, okay.
it became 26.
Okay, so then let's do the check signing. I think we can just read this by title only. Is everybody okay with that, reading it by title only? Judy?
Okay, this is Resolution 2013-26. It's a check signing U.S. Bank General Checking and Guaranteed Deposits.
This is to add and change signatories on the checking account. We require 2 signatures, and this will be, I think Rachel and Judy are already the signers. It will be adding me as council president, Melissa Van Zant as the new finance director, and Kent Bristol as the interim village manager. It will make it much easier for staff because we were clearly down to the limit of, down to the wire of how many people could sign checks, so it was getting a little bit frantic for folks. So, any questions, council?
Actually, I just wondered, under section 1, where it lists the names, and it says signed by Rachel, Karen, Melissa, Kent, and Judy, we don't need to have an and/or there? Because when I read this sentence, it just looks to me like it could be interpreted that everybody has to sign,
It says 2 signers required.
right? Which, the first part's clear, that was the only thing I noticed.
I
Yeah, well, yeah, I was going to say, the whole first sentence or 2 talks about which kind of account requires how many signatures, so,
Part of
and
the,
they vary, so, yeah, so you would, yeah.
it's actually all one sentence, that whole paragraph.
Right. That's why it's a little
One
bit
sentence,
confusing.
And that makes it confusing. But since it's all one sentence, the 2 signers, the 1 signer and the 2 signer are, I wouldn't want to have to diagram it, but.
Diagram the sentence?
Yeah, it would be a complicated one.
It's almost Joycean in nature, one might say.
Indeed.
Do you want me to throw in an or?
Well, I just thought before your name, if it said and/or, then it's clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess we hadn't had a motion. Can I get a motion for this?
I move.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now which one are we at?
Bond counsel.
Bond counsel, okay. Previously tabled resolution 2013-43, retaining services of bond counsel. So what do we do to untable? We need a motion to untable? Can I get a motion to untable?
So moved.
Second.
Do I need to take a vote on that, or are we just, that's it? Do I take a vote to
It
untable?
would not hurt to take a vote. I'm not certain.
All those in
that-
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. So this goes back to the resolution from, I think it's 2 meetings ago. We had the presentation from Squires and Sanders about being Margaret Comey, about the services that they would provide as bond counsel. on the Center for Business and Education. They provided the services when we refinanced this building, and what they would do is help us present a strategy and present a plan that they would recommend as far as borrowing to build the infrastructure for the Center for Business and Education. It's basically just to move forward. I consider the next one, the underwriter services, those two go together because they deal more with the actual underwriting of the note, and it would basically tell us what our obligations, what our debt obligations are going to be, what strategies we might use to pay off the note, how much it's going to be annually. So it would basically be to come back to us with a plan for financing the infrastructure. And then we would talk about that, we would authorize that if we were going to move forward. Kent, what?
Yeah, it's a division of function because the bond counsel is going to do the legal work and make sure, for example, that anything we issue, whether it's notes or bonds, is tax exempt and is, meets our needs, for example, by making it possible for us to refund them or pay them off early without penalty, those kinds of things. They look at the legal aspects. The Securities and Exchange Commission has ruled quite clearly that lawyers can't give financial advice. And so that's why we need an underwriter, because they look at things like the market and interest rates and how you structure your term and so on. And so they look at the dollar and cent strategy. So it's a partnership.
So do you have, we had talked at the last meeting about getting Rachel involved, and now that we have Melissa on board, is that, are you all planning on meeting? I mean, what's the strategy for moving forward with
If you tell us
counsel?
to do it, then I think we would be a team that would meet with the experts, the consultants, and work with them. I've contacted the two local banks because it came up at a meeting recently. Could we or should we just borrow through one of the local banks? And I'm still waiting. I've had a conversation with each of them, and I've heard back, and we're going back and forth. What they're telling me, I think, will not be as attractive as issuing bonds. As nearly as I can tell, none of the banks will issue any kind of debt instrument that will go for more than 5 to 10 years without a reopener for the interest rates. And of course, that's one of the attractions of doing the financing now, is that interest rates are at historical lows, and they're probably not going to go anywhere but up. So I would think anything that would reopen that window 5 or 10 years in the future would probably be questionable. But we need to continue to talk and see. At first, I thought banks could only issue short-term notes. And then I think, well, they do mortgages for real estate. Why couldn't we do something like that for the village and use the land as collateral? So we're looking at that also.
Council, do we want to go around the table with comments and questions? Mary Ann, do you want to start?
Yes. I abstained on this vote because I'm concerned about, it's not because I oppose the CBE, but I'm concerned that we're backing into this without having done some of the work that I think we should have done beforehand. And I've actually written something that I would like to read.
Sure.
There's no way to know whether the CBE will be successful and accomplish the stated objectives. And I think that the community is divided in terms of seeing this as a positive or negative step. I believe that the project will succeed or fail based on our efforts to envision, plan, work on it, and make it our own. I'm concerned that framing the discussion in terms of pro or con leaves out the middle where the real questions and issues lie. There are several things that I believe need to precede Council's approval of funding the CBE infrastructure. The Council needs to fully commit to this undertaking for it to be successful, and I don't believe that we've done that. This is a very long-term investment and will take concerted effort on the part of the village and community resources for years to come. Council needs to understand the implications of the financial commitment, which will involve more than just the $700,000 and the $300,000 that we've loaned, in other words, $1 million. There is a cost of the interest for probably 15 to 20 years, my guess, management, oversight, maintenance of the infrastructure and upkeep, etc. And I think that we need to communicate this to the community. This, I think, is a new venture, unlike any the village has taken in the past, and will involve ongoing effort from council, village staff, and community resources for many years. And there needs to be that understanding and commitment to take this on as a priority, and I don't believe we've really done that. We, the council, should discuss the time commitment that will be involved for village staff and this and future councils. I believe we should communicate this to the community before taking steps toward funding the CBE infrastructure. Things I think are important for the CBE include a commitment to develop the CBE using sustainable building and land use practices, a policy for incentives to be used in negotiating with potential businesses, and a draft has been created by the Economic Sustainability Commission, which is not functional right now, and the understanding that it's likely that the $300,000 loan that the village gave for the purchase of the property may well be used as part of the incentive package for businesses. And I think that the community, I think we should be upfront about that. I also believe that we need to commit to a discussion about whether community resources should be a designated CIC. Then the last point, I see the CBE as part of a well-articulated written economic development strategy, and I don't believe we have such a strategy. The Economic Sustainability Commission drafted a plan which I believe council did not approve. That plan, I think, has pieces of what could be an economic development strategy. I'm not a specialist in this, but I see the CBE as sort of the end point of our economic strategy, which really, I think, starts at the very small businesses. And I would see that strategy having things that would include how we support businesses all the way along the line, from the smallest home business to the mid-sized businesses that we would expect to see in the CBE. I believe it should focus primarily on existing businesses and the potential for existing businesses in Yellow Springs. It could include such mechanisms as the revolving loan fund, which I think should be reinvigorated, mentorship opportunities, apprenticeships, focusing on supplying local needs through local services and products, the development of a business incubator, etc. I don't think it would take a long time to do this. I think a lot of this has been partially done, but I think that should be done before we move into the CBE. And also, I think that our economic development strategy and the CBE should be framed within the context of the potential economic trends nationally and internationally, including the critical environmental issues of our time, which I see as climate change, fossil fuel reduction, and energy sustainability. So, again, what I'm saying is I don't oppose the CBE, but I think, and I understand it's taken a long time, but I don't feel like we haven't addressed some of the critical things to sort of put out there to go into the CBE, as, for example, we have with the water sourcing, which we've had people come in and talk about the water sourcing, and we've gotten a lot of information about that, but I feel, well, I don't need to say anymore.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I essentially agree with the issues that Mary Ann raised, but when I look at this particular resolution, what's really important to me is that we get the other information we need. And a big piece of that information is understanding how we're going to finance any infrastructure investment that we move forward with. So I do not believe that this is a decision to committing to that investment by any means. And I do agree there is still some work to be done. I liked what Lisa Abel said at our last meeting, and many other people have mentioned this. Also, if you looked in the packet, Mary Ann brought up some other issues. And I think the December 5th forum is moving us towards that. But I strongly believe that we need all the information as a community and a council to make this decision. And the reality is, this is going to take at least 6 weeks, probably a couple months, to get the financial investment strategy together.
Thanks. Jerry?
I think both of these are critical. We need to have a good understanding of what type of financing is available and what the costs to us are. We don't have the expertise here to do that, and I think by retaining the services of these folks that will give us that additional piece of information, it still will give us the option to decline to go along with anything that they come up with. So I don't see this as being a mandate or a decision on the CBE. I see it as getting additional information so we can move forward. So I don't have a problem with that portion of it. You know, I can understand why the language is as such, saying that we plan to or we have the intent, but you know, we have to be upfront with the folks that we're going to be working with, so that they'll give us the best information that we can get, so we can make an intelligent decision. Because I think some of the concern on a lot of the folks are going to be, what is it going to cost me, and what that cost impact may be on other projects. And I think by getting that information, we should be able to weigh that against, and it may even help us when we look at future projects as to the type of our resources and mechanisms that are out there for us to borrow. So I don't have a problem right now with the two resolutions.
Thanks, Jerry. Lori?
I guess I'd like to just make sure that, because that was my understanding, basically what Brian and Jerry were saying was that these resolutions do not, even though it can be confusing, because the first whereas says we will install or we are planning to install. But my understanding is that these resolutions don't commit us to that, but they will get us information that will help us get a better sense for the cost. Is that fair to say, Ken?
Yes. Yeah, these are professionals, and they're not going to invest their time in it if they're not going to be paid. And this simply says, if you work for us, we'll pay you whether we go ahead with the project or not. So.
There's a lot of people here. I have a feeling a lot of them are to speak about this issue. The first hand I saw raised was Demi's. Come on up.
And just a reminder that we have a 3-minute limit, so I'll be using my phone thing to do that. So just be prepared for that when you come up. And thanks for coming up and speaking into the mic and saying your name. Thanks a lot.
Demi Reber. And I appreciate what Mary Ann said very much, and I hope that this is clear, that you haven't made a decision yet, but you're just exploring and gaining information. I want to, as the village explores what it would take to support the CBE and whether it is advisable to do so, I'd like to pull together some questions that come to mind and also have been raised by others, and ask that we look at the whole situation more broadly. The joint enterprise between Community Resources and Antioch Midwest put forth very similar constructions of what we need in this village 7 years ago, and the same constructions are returning. And the way I hear it, it's that the town couldn't survive if we didn't fund the CBE. And yet here we are 7 years later, still functioning. And the way I heard it also was, it was not only as if there was an emergency, but there was no discussion of how long this strategy would take. 7 years later, there's not a building in sight. My credibility is still strained. The implied immediate benefits are not in sight and won't be for some time to come. And we seem to have survived. Antioch is growing stronger, and that was without any help from council. Then the research that the Yellow Springs News has done raises interesting questions for me about how real is the need for a place that existing businesses can expand into, since they discovered many young businesses that don't seem to want to take on the financial risk of building. So often we're asked to choose within a narrowly viewed perspective, as if not giving unqualified support to CBE is a vote against jobs. Is there only one way to get jobs? And what kind of jobs do we want to support? Are we desperate to attract any kind of business? One of the Dayton developers that the news interviewed reports that they are promoting UAV industries, unmanned aerial vehicles. Is that what we want to support? I believe the appropriate role of council is to support development consistent with our values. Let's not sound the alarm to create a mood where the message is attract business at all cost. If the village pays for infrastructure, what say will they have about who comes? What about community guidelines for businesses? If the village lends support, the village should protect the welfare of inhabitants. Businesses should have no environmental threats, support our shared social values, provide jobs that are meaningful as well as lucrative. I don't believe the village should provide the whole support. It was not long ago that we passed a levy to do some long overdue maintenance. We're considering 700,000. We need a new water system.
Demi, your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could I have a half a minute longer? I just have another paragraph to read.
Go ahead. I'm
Thank you.
the chair.
I just want to suggest allotting money that we need for green space, that we need for an economic development director, that Mary Ann touched on, that committee that no longer exists, and, okay, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Jerry? State
I'd
your
just
name,
like
please.
to, my
State your
name is
name.
Jerry Sutton. I'm with Community Resources. I'd just like to put the two resolutions in a little context. 2 months ago, in this very room, council unanimously passed a resolution giving public notice of an intent to recover pre-issuance expenses from the bonds once they're issued, if they're issued. Tonight, 2 months later, we have resolutions to authorize the village manager to enter into those agreements as indicated with bond counsel and with the underwriter to incur some of those expenses. So this is part of the progress. We are not committing, because those efforts, those professional efforts, will simply get the information together to bring back an ordinance that this body will address. Why is it going to take a couple of weeks at least, if not a month or so, to do this? Because bonds are securities. They have to meet the criteria of the state when they're put on the marketplace. A lot of legalities. It's not, unusual. It happens all the time. We've got bonds on this building, but it takes time. And unless we start, we're never going to get there. 2 months ago, this council, the predecessor, we have to revisit all issues of every council apparently, but they said, okay, we would like to have the bonds and be underway, have a bid package early in the first quarter of 2014. That is not possible at this point because we've lost at least a month on this, likely another month. So with a little skill and cunning, we can miss the entire build project cycle next year. I would urge you to get on with it.
Thank you, Jerry. Catherine?
Got a bit of a frog in my throat. Catherine Vanderheiden, President of Community Resources at the moment. I want to ask you all to consider these two resolutions. They move things forward, they make no promises, but it's a way of getting information on the table, which I think is sorely needed. I'm not necessarily ever in disagreement with more conversation, but one of the things that I was wanting to rebut is this is not an emergency, Demi. This is only the fact that we are likely to lose the money from the Corps of Engineers to the tune of about $400,000, and we've already lost around $400,000 from ODOT because it took an awful lot of time to get what was happening in 2006 to move forward. So I'll remind everybody, at the moment that they approved it, they also said, y'all are not shovel-ready, we're giving it to somebody else. That will happen again. That doesn't mean that we don't have more conversations to have, but we also need to start moving forward. The other thing is that we have a planning commission in addition to village council, and to my mind, that's a balance in the structure. You recently approved and wrote into the new zoning that the CBE would be a PUD. That in and of itself is a process that will slow down an awful lot of people who are thinking to come here, even if they wanted to, because the process is going to be grueling. So we have lots of checks and balances if you're worried about who might come or not come. But the other thing that I know is long-term, that if you only limit yourselves to what you can create in this village, eventually you really do lose market share, because you have to start thinking outside of the village. There are many people who have our values, but if we don't invite them to come join us, we're cutting off our left foot despite our right one. And so that's part of the thing that I'd really like people to be considering. I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, mostly what Jerry said. I just really want you to approve the moving forward of looking into getting the information. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Catherine. Lauren?
Hello, my name is Lauren Miller. I don't know whether I'm for or against the CBC. I've kind of vacillated for a great amount of time. One minute I think I'm this way, and then, the next it's something else. But what I do think is that the village would benefit by doing due diligence. And that's what I hear a number of you talk about. The other question I have is, how much? Is there a cost to retaining these services? And how much is it?
It's not a fixed fee, it's an hourly rate.
And what is that hourly rate?
I'm sorry, I've read this, but it's been
Right.
weeks, so I can't tell you
Right,
off the
and
top of my
that
head.
type of information, to me, is part of the due diligence. And that, when you make a resolution like this and you don't share that type of information, I wonder, more, I want to know more information, and that in itself would slow down the process. So I think one of the things that I feel a need to hear is, how much is these two services that you're talking about right now, how much is it likely to cost? How many hours is it likely to require? Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Any other comments? Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam Young. I've been listening to the conversation about CBE for some time. I'll try to keep my comments short. If I understood what you all said earlier in this meeting, this resolution is part of the due diligence, not cutting it off. That is, you haven't committed anything, you're just gathering data at this point. And I think you should move ahead with that. I've lived in town about 50 years, and in that time, by my calculations, the population has decreased by approximately 40%. I think there are things that hide some of the facts from us. For example, if we had a family of 4 living here 30 years ago and 2 of them were children and grew up and left, but the utility bill didn't go down, and the utilities are costing twice as much. And I think that's kind of hidden from us because it's one household, we're still getting the same utility bill. But I think that kind of population loss leads to deferred maintenance. I think that's part of what we're up against with our water system. And I think one of Arthur Morgan's tenets of a healthy community that I happen to believe in is that we provide the same number of jobs as we have people in the workforce. Therefore, for every person that leaves town and goes to work somewhere else and leaves his tax dollars there, someone else is coming in and leaving their tax dollars here. It's a matter of balance. I think that we need to move ahead with the CBE because it provides jobs, but I think we need to see it as the first step, not as something isolated by itself. We need that because we do need the jobs. We also need to increase our population, and there ought to be some kind of a context of all of the improvements in the infrastructure that we need so we can have something like a comprehensive plan. And I don't mean what the village has that's called a comprehensive plan, which is great, but it's not pragmatic in terms of how much money are we going to need and where's it going to come from and so on. So I would encourage you to move ahead with the CBE, but see it as a first step, not an end in itself. I think we really need it.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks. Any other comments?
Welcome. My name is Bill Short. I live on Allen Street. I'd like to welcome the new members and the old members of the council. Your job as council members is to vote for the good of the village, not of the whole, not to the minority. This goes for the CBE request and other items in the future that will come before your body. Remember, as I stated in the paper, you're going to come asking for more tax money if we don't create more jobs, more real estate tax. The schools are going to come for more things. So you have to look at the whole picture. I bought a building on a phone call one time. We've been at this 13 years trying to help the village get ahead. It's like pay me now or pay me later. Which way do you guys want to go? Your job is to help the village, help the people. Brian, you just mentioned something. What is it that you want us to provide? We've given you all kinds of things. I hear talk about all just that. But Brian, I don't know what you want. Tell me what you want so we can give it to you so we can move forward. You're sitting and just not doing anything on this council. The water coming up. You should be buying water from Springfield. I don't want to get into that issue, but it's, you know, how long does it take you folks to build it? It's like building Obamacare. $600 million and it still doesn't work. Come on, folks. Let's get on with the program and get it done. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anything else? Bring it back to council table. Lauren, your question, you actually asked a good question. We've got it right here. This is from Margaret Comey. I initially estimate the legal fees for the representation with respect to creation of the TIF area to be approximately $6,000 plus out-of-pocket expenses. I estimate the legal fees for the representation with respect to preparing the proceedings for approving the issuance of bond anticipation notes to be $4,500, and if bonds are issued, for bonds to be $14,750 plus out-of-pocket expenses. So it's, this initial part that we're talking about right now would be around $10,000. And it's my understanding that the underwriters, and I realize we're not talking about this part of it in this resolution, but that the underwriters will only charge if they, if we actually buy the bonds. They're finance guys, so they don't get paid unless there's actually a financial transaction. These guys are attorneys, and they always get paid. So, that was really helpful, and I apologize for not having that handy before. I appreciate everything that everybody said. I know I've been in a meeting with Mary Ann where she expressed some of the concerns, and the letter that she had provided at the last meeting, I think, had some good points, and I think a lot of this work can go on in a parallel fashion. A lot of the additional due diligence can go on in a parallel fashion with this work happening. And to me, this is a big piece of it. Mary Ann projected what she thought it might cost, what our payback might be, what our cost might be, but we really don't know. And until we have this information, it's just another piece of the due diligence, just like the engineering, just like the estimate that we had put together. So I support moving forward with this particular resolution so that we can get that information and have that as part of the package. I think that council, and we're going to be talking later about the forum that the McKee Group is having, then maybe we can take a little bit of time and talk about what we see as next steps of how we're going to gather information, the information that we want to see. And I do want to say one thing to a comment that Demi made about that we haven't assisted Antioch College. We haven't directly given them cash. We have partnered with them on infrastructure. We have provided infrastructure extensions and work to them at no cost. So there has been a partnership and a commitment to Antioch College in a different fashion. So any other comments from council?
Yeah, I do want to say, Bill, I appreciate your comments and everyone else's too, but I do think it's really clear that this council is taking action. We're not delaying at all. And, I think it's clear by bringing this back on the table, moving forward, doing our due diligence. And I do think Mary Ann and others have articulated some questions that do need to be answered that are reasonable. And that's why the McKee Group is having the December 5th forum. So I think all these things are fair. It's very important that everybody gets a chance to share their comments and thoughts. And I really appreciate this council taking action on this and other things. All right, we're talking about the village manager today. We're getting going with the water sourcing. So we are not going to be delaying on any of these big decisions.
Ready for the vote?
We do need a motion.
Oh, we didn't have a motion yet? Well, wait, it was just a motion to untable.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, a motion on the ordinance.
So moved.
Or, excuse me, on the resolution. Second?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
My sense is that when you untable something, what you're doing is, it's already been moved and seconded on the
Yeah.
first meeting. So you don't need to remove and second, because you just tabled it.
Okay.
Belt and suspenders, I think, Ken would say.
No one will accuse us.
But the second one, we do need to do.
Yes, we haven't touched this.
Didn't even make it to the table.
Well, and you had a different council.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't read this, so will you, so the next we have Resolution 2013-14, retaining services of underwriter. 44, gee.
2013-44, right?
Yes, thank you.
Authorizing execution of an agreement for underwriting services with Connors and Company Incorporated. Whereas the Village of Yellow Springs is planning to install certain public improvements in a business park, the Center for Business and Education, and whereas the scale of the project will require borrowing money to fund the cost of the planned improvements, and whereas financing on this scale is rarely undertaken by the village and is sufficiently complex to require the retention of expert advisors, now therefore the Council of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio does hereby resolve that. Section 1, it hereby declares its intent to contract with the firm of Connors and Company Incorporated, with whom it has had previous satisfactory engagements to act as underwriters. Section 2, in order to retain the services of Connors and Company Incorporated, the village manager is hereby authorized and directed to execute the attached underwriting agreement on behalf of the village. Section 3, this resolution shall take effect and be enforced from and after the date of its passage.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I won't go into a lot of explanation, although I will ask a question, Kent. You were mentioning that you had been contacted and were in some conversation with our local banks. It's my impression that passing this resolution will have no impact. I mean, until we're not saying that we're buying bonds from them. We're just getting their advice. Is that?
Yeah, we want to shop the market, and if we can get a better price locally and on good terms, you may not even need to issue bonds.
Okay. Comments, any comments from council? Comments from citizens?
Yeah, I
Oh,
guess
excuse
I would just like to say something. You know, this is my second council meeting. Brian and I, our second council meeting. And this is a pretty big deal, you know, to come into. I mean, I was pretty much coming to every council meeting for the last several months, but it's only been since I've actually been on council that I have been reading all the material that the CR people have provided, been reading books on economic development, local democracy, et cetera. So, you know, it's a big thing to come into the middle of, and I certainly am not trying to stop the CBE. I want to see it be successful. And I think the only way it will be successful is we all are on board and really get behind it, and that's what I'm concerned about.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Comments from citizens? Roy?
Hello, I'm Roy Qualls. I also serve on the CBE board. And first, I love Mary Ann's comments. I think there's a laundry list of great things to do in the process, and making sure that we're all in the canoe. And you know, we don't want this to be an adversarial thing. We want this to work for the whole village. And just having been involved in this process for a couple of years, having looked for a place for my own business for a long time, I'm just thrilled to see the energy gathering around this, and the focus is sharpening. So kudos to all of you for coming right in, getting to work, and I hope you pass it, and we can just, you know, move on with all the other parallel activities that we have to do. And I think that it's wise to, I have 3 more minutes, right?
I'm going to guess 1.5.
Anyway, and so I think it's wise to, you know, for the whole community to talk about this, and can't wait for the James McKee discussion on Thursday. And I think this is a community at work. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Bringing it back to council table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Again, you're abstaining again? Okay. I don't know how to call that.
Abstentions.
I know, but I don't know. Okay, it's done. Okay, moving on to Resolution 2013-47 in support of the purchase of Camp Green by the Glen Helen Association. Judy, will you read that?
Yes, whereas on November 26, 2013, the Yellow Springs Village Council received a request from the Glen Helen Association, an independent 501c3 nonprofit corporation, for support of their application to the State of Ohio Public Works Commission for purchase of 28.35 acres of land currently owned by the Girl Scouts of Western Ohio and known as Camp Green. And whereas the Yellow Springs Village Council has reviewed this request for support of the application and has determined that the conservation of the Camp Green property is important to the long-range goals of the Village of Yellow Springs regarding the protection of our water supply. And whereas council has reviewed this request for support of the application and determined that the conservation of the Camp Green property is important with the long-range goals of council regarding open space protection, and whereas council finds the request for the real estate purchase acceptable for achieving the desired outcome of the conservation of the Camp Green property, and whereas the purchaser, the Glen Helen Association, wishes to participate and commits to finance no less than 25% of the purchase price, now therefore the council for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio hereby resolves that Section 1, council hereby supports the request for purchase of the Camp Green property by the Glen Helen Association. Section 2, council hereby certifies that the conservation of the Camp Green property is in accordance with the long-range goals regarding protection of open space and water supply for the Village of Yellow Springs.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I will, this obviously came on the agenda unexpectedly. I received a call from Sam Young last week, and the resolution, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, but Sam is here, and I would like to turn the floor over to him to explain a bit about it.
Hello again. I'm Sam Young, and in this case, I'm here for the Glen Helen Association. Glen Helen Association is involved in an effort to receive a grant from,
Clean Ohio.
It's in there, Clean Ohio Fund, for the purchase of Camp Green. Camp Green is the Girl Scout camp, as probably everyone knows, that's on Grinnell Road. It has about 1,900 feet of frontage on the Little Miami River. Most of that is adjacent to Glen Helen, and that is across the river from Glen Helen. The property, the Girl Scouts have decided to liquidate 3 of their camps, and Camp Green, they've already sold the other 2, I think, or are in process. But Camp Green is the one that they have kept in the most least developed condition of all their camps. There are some buildings on it. There's a very large lodge. There's a couple of dormitory-style camp buildings. There's a maintenance building, and there is a campground, tent campground with platforms, 10 or 12 platforms that are serviceable. In terms of use, well, the long-term idea is that maybe this could become part of Glen Helen. And the precedent for that is the 5.1 acres, which was owned for a number of years by Glen Helen Association and has been returned to Glen Helen now. Glen Helen Association would take title to this property and would keep it long enough to fulfill the requirements of the grant application. Some of those requirements, which are as yet not too specific, but we get points in the grant application for promising to clear invasive species on a certain percentage of the property. In this case, we'd probably commit to clearing the honeysuckle on 10 acres over a period of a couple of years. And there's things like that. Camp Green also has a number of, quite a variety of different species, most of which are native. And they're also critical to, in my opinion at least, to the water supply of Yellow Springs. The Little Miami River flows right over or right through our well field. I understand the water comes from a little deeper than the river. Nonetheless, I don't like the idea of anything flowing over top of it. And we do know from the other 2 camps that Camp Green, that the Girl Scouts are committed to selling them. One has been sold to a conservation buyer, and one is in the process of being sold to a private buyer. Nobody knows what the private buyer will do to it, so we're very anxious that Camp Green not be sold to a private buyer. Between the water supply and the open space, we feel that this is a critical thing, and we hope everyone else agrees. Rather than take more than 3 minutes, let me ask if you have questions that I could try to answer for you.
Council, questions for Sam? Citizens, any questions, comments?
We're asking only for a resolution of support.
Just a resolution.
Yes. The grant we're applying for would cover 75% of the cost if we got the full amount, which is questionable. We think that we have, and it's perhaps not certain, but we think we have the other 25% covered. We don't anticipate the need to come to any of the governmental agencies and ask for contributions. That could change, but for now, that's what it looks like.
Thank you, Sam. Doesn't look like we have any questions. I personally think this is obviously something that is within our desires and mission. Sam mentioned the well fields, and clearly the open space, the importance of that open space is critical. And to me, it's great that there's an organization like the Glen Helen Association that's ready and able to step up and do this. We'll take a vote.
Just one small thing. The first paragraph, the second line where it says for support of their application, could we just clarify that and say Glen Helen Association's application?
Instead of there.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of different players in that paragraph, so it would be nice just to make that technically clear.
All those in favor signify by, oh, do you have a comment? I'm sorry.
No.
Oh.
Ready to
You're just
vote.
getting ready to, oh.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
thanks to the association. Sure.
Thank you is the first thing. The second thing is, just in terms of a timeline, we're not under great time restraints in terms of the purchase, but we are under time constraints in terms of filing the application for the grant, which is due in mid-January, and I wanted to have these resolutions lined up by mid-February. So if you could call me and let me know when you have a copy ready that's signed or something, I'd be delighted to come down and pick it up.
If you want to stay around tonight, it
Well,
shall be done.
But we want to make that one, we can make that one change, the change that Brian asked. We can, I mean, it sounds like he has plenty of time, so you can just make the change and get it to him. Thank you. Now is the time on the agenda for citizens' concerns for any items that aren't on the agenda already. Lori's already done a good job of explaining our 3-minute time limit, and she's doing a good job of keeping track of it. So if you come up and state your name and say what you would like to say. Lauren?
My name is Lauren Miller, and I'm representing part of this, some other residents here.
Okay.
Do they need to also introduce themselves
Yes,
at this
please.
point?
Hi, I'm Hans Jacobson.
Hello, I'm Hillary Pearson.
Good evening, Ryan Pearson.
Okay.
Thank you. I've prepared this so I can stay on topic. I'm here tonight as a representative for a growing coalition of concerned Yellow Springs residents, neighbors, and community members of the green space commonly referred to as the golf course. We would like to be clear that our coalition is united in congratulating Antioch College in its success to date. However, while our group is enthusiastic about Antioch's rebirth and supports Antioch College's success, we have an unfortunate growing concern over Antioch College as a respectful neighbor. During the spring of 2013, I understand Antioch College coined the term the Antioch Village, a concept about collaboration with the village of Yellow Springs. We're not real sure what that truly means, but believe Antioch could be a very positive institutional community member. This May, Antioch's president, Mark Roosevelt, made a presentation to the college trustees in which he shared a message, and I quote, "There are significant ways we can break new ground in relationship with the village we call home," Roosevelt said. Little did we know at that time that Antioch's president may have been speaking literally as well as figuratively, for as we speak, of course, the golf course is certainly a lot of broken ground. This group was formed in response to Antioch College's level of disrespectful inconsideration and inaccurate communication regarding their current geothermal project of digging 150 300-foot wells, as well as their verbalized intention to create a livestock production facility on the green space commonly known as the golf course. This coalition would like to officially question the process in which Antioch College was permitted to move forth to have animals other than chickens on their space zoned as educational, not agricultural. Our group is requesting public clarification of what process took place and to receive the transcript and/or documents pertaining to that decision. Secondly, and due to the aforementioned, we are requesting advance public notification of any zoning discussions involving the green space commonly referred to as the golf course, so that concerned neighbors, nearby residents, and other community members may weigh in on these decisions. We want to introduce ourselves as a coalition seriously concerned about Antioch College's, quote, proposed farm, unquote, on the golf course, and the reduction, as we just were talking about, of critical open space within the village, and are generally opposed to the concept of a livestock production facility within the village and specifically on the golf course. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thanks. Thanks all. Any other comments? Any other citizens' concerns? Joan? Yeah.
I'm Joan Edwards. This is an issue that I've brought up before council previously, and it has to do with safety within the village. I'm very concerned about the continuing failure for people to stop at stop signs, particularly the one at the high school. I live on the corner directly across from the high school, and some people barely pause coming around that corner. I suggest that the village perhaps look into some kind of alteration in the pavement that would force people to slow down, at least, so that they would be likely to come to a stop. There are rumble strips of various sorts that are around in the area, but I see so many people failing to stop or barely even slow down at that particular corner. And I want to remind the community that the speed limit on West South College is 25, not 50. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Anything else? Excuse me.
I know we don't like to comment and so forth, but I know Ken and Tony are aware of that issue, and they have been posting officers up there, at least during the drop-off period. And I live right up there with you, Joan, and I guess it's like anything else. When the officers are there, everybody slows down. As soon as the officers leave, it's a rat race again. But I know the guys are aware of that, and we got to figure out something to try to slow the folks down in that area. So.
Well, if there's any kind of modifications that staff wants to bring or any sort of ideas, I think I would assume council would be willing to entertain them. I don't know that we're the ones that should be sitting here discussing it, but we would certainly entertain proposals.
Yeah, Ken, in particular, I've heard the rumble strips mentioned before, and I don't know if maybe we could get some information about.
Oh, I'm thinking probably a speed hump would be a better
Speed hump.
choice.
Okay.
Yeah, rumble strips are noisy, but they don't really
Okay.
act as much of a deterrent.
Again, Jerry just clarified, we don't typically take up conversations because it could turn into a whole nother agenda topic. But just in response to one of the questions that was raised by Lauren and the group of neighbors, by virtue of the zoning code, the neighbors will be notified if there is any request. The whole farm issue was a conditional use in the new zoning code, so those neighbors will be informed if there is any zoning request put forward to add animals or to make any additional changes. It's my understanding, and because it did go through Kent, there were questions that did go through Kent regarding the geothermal, and there is nothing in our code that required any sort of permitting for that. I think they had to go through the building department, chances are, but there was nothing related to zoning for that. And I think we have, on other occasions, when we were doing the zoning code, we did address the issue of the farm animals that are there now. I honestly don't believe that there is probably much record of those decisions being made. It was they were staff decisions that were made. So I think what I would just say to that group is that your concerns in regard to future land use changes will be addressed, because there will be an open public hearing and a discussion, the conditional use discussion at the zoning or at the planning commission meetings. So now we're moving on. We don't have any special reports tonight. We're moving on to old business. The village manager search process report. That was taken on by Brian Hausch and Jerry Sims, and I'll turn it over to the two of you.
So now, this was something that was not in the online packet, but I think there were copies outside with some notes, and I think there are basically three issues that we need to look at as a council. One of those is the question of moving forward with a consultant. That was particularly what we talked about at our last meeting. I do want to add a couple things to that. I had several discussions last week and today with some potential consultants. Kent actually provided a lot of great information in that regard. One of the things that we clarified is the school board did not use a consultant in their last hiring round, but they had used a consultant prior to that. Her name is Mary Rita Weissman. I think a lot of people might know her. She's based in Dayton. And part of the reason they did not use a consultant this last time was because they had been through the process 3 times and felt competent, and they also had staff support. And I think those are 2 issues that were brought up last time. We don't have a lot of extra staff to dedicate to this, not to mention the lack of expertise. A second issue, of course, will be thinking about budget, and I mean, I think that's probably the next piece of the conversation. And I guess one thing that I want to highlight is looking at some of the things that a consultant can add value in the process that I don't think we've had in the past. 2 of the consultants I talked to, including Mary, emphasized sitting down with council members, and it reminded me of Phyllis Schmidt made a comment at our last meeting about the importance of this being a 2-way process, making sure that our new village manager can work well with village council and vice versa, so that we do form a leadership team. One of the things that the consultants mentioned is sitting down with village council members individually and collectively to really talk about what the role is and how our style of government works in Yellow Springs. Another thing that I think is important to consider here is providing outside perspective. I think many of us here strongly believe that there should be citizen involvement and also active council involvement, but at the same time, I think there is some value to be considered in that outside perspective, non-biased perspective that can be help with this process. The other thing that a couple consultants mentioned is actively recruiting. So not just putting out a notice, but actually through their networks of potential village managers, being able to actually go to people that have the skill set that we're looking for. And related to that, the consultants that I thought might rise to the top really emphasize that they've worked with citizen groups before and they understand that piece of the process. So I know a lot of times, I mentioned this before I came into the meeting, the C word in Yellow Springs, but this is not going to be a process where we're just handing it over. If we do have a consultant support us, it still means a lot of work that needs to be done by council and citizens. And finally, strategically placing our job notice. And that's an example of, I think, an area of expertise that we do not have to make sure that we're actually attracting the right candidates. So those were some of the things I wanted to highlight, and I guess maybe we should discuss a little bit more some of the thoughts that other council members have.
Jerry, do you have anything to add?
Me and Brian probably went round and around on citizen participation and when should it occur and how. And I think the one area that we did come to consensus is bringing candidates in and spending a day or so with the citizens and so forth. Citizens and having an exchange in the social where the citizens get a chance to talk to who may be our next village manager and so forth. As to citizens' involvement up front, early on, I kind of lean more to saying that was, I thought that's council along with the consultant to help us get the initial word out. And also to kind of vet or determine who our most viable candidates are, and then bring in citizens. But on the whole, we kind of agreed in the overall process.
Lori, you've always taken a strong leadership role in these hiring because you have experience at Wittenberg. Do you have what's your opinion?
Well, I think the word, that the idea that an outside group can serve as a kind of facilitator, and that they can help us to get the word out and maybe help us to do some recruiting. I don't see that as being something that we have staff to do, or as much citizen ability to do, but, so I think there's some logic in hiring a consultant, although I am interested. I didn't realize that the school board did not use any kind of facilitator to help them with the more recent hiring. But they had some pretty good staff who could devote considerable time to that.
Yeah, a couple board members had staff support that they could bring in, so. So it was led by Sean Creighton and Benji Mariama, and then they had resources, labor that they could bring in to help.
Oh, okay, so they brought that in, like, from the organizations they're affiliated with.
Exactly.
Ah, yeah.
Right.
Kent, do you have thoughts about anything?
When I came here 35 years ago, they had a pretty extensive process, and I think I spent 2 or 3 days in Yellow Springs. And I met with council members as a group twice. I met with them individually. I met with the school superintendent. And when we still had an industrial base, the human resource people from Vernay and Antioch Publishing and YSI formed a 3-person committee to do interviewing. And they interviewed me. We had a public session at the library. It went on, pretty rigorous schedule for several days.
How many candidates were there at that
There were
point?
5.
Five candidates
finalists,
did
yeah.
all that? Wow.
Yeah, now one of them was an in-house person. I don't know that they went through all of that with him, but there were at least 4 of us that they went through that with. Yeah, it took a lot of time. So, and as I said, they did it. I've been in situations where all they did was an interview, and I found myself sitting in an anteroom to the council chamber with my competitors comparing notes and sizing each other up. This wasn't like that at all.
Marianne?
Well, I would like to see citizen involvement, and I think that there may be citizens that could also help with the search process. So I talked to Benji about the process they used, and he said he thought the most important thing was really getting the word out and using non-traditional ways and using mouth-to-mouth. I mean, I know a young person who is interested in the job, who is a community development person in Colorado. So that kind of thing, people that we know, whether they're in town or whether they're out of town, he said he felt like that was the most important thing, of just that outreach. And so I would like to see early citizen involvement. I had talked with Brian before the meeting and liked what he said about the 2 of the potential facilitators talking with village council. I also thought what Phyllis Schmidt said about what are our expectations as council and working with the village manager. I think that's important for us to know, and also potential village managers. And I also think it's important for citizens to have some interaction as we're talking about this. What do we expect of citizens vis-a-vis the village manager? What do citizens expect of the village manager? So I don't exactly know how to involve citizens, but I do think that I'd like to see citizen involvement, and we have so many people that do so many different things that I'm sure that they can help in this process.
Yeah, I
Along
mean,
with the consultant. I don't have a problem with the consultant.
Yeah, I mean, I think the consultant is the facilitator that facilitates all those conversations and that provides the expertise, that knows the questions to ask, that knows how to get people involved. And I mean, clearly, when it comes to social media, I mean, there is an outreach. There is no reason that every citizen in Yellow Springs can't participate in sending out. I mean, I assume we'll have a resume, or not a resume, but we'll have some kind of a job description that we can send out and put on any Facebook page that we want. So, that kind of outreach, I think, is important. I don't think a citizen needs to be part of a committee to do that kind of outreach. I would hope not. I would hope that if people knew somebody that they felt would be qualified, that they would share that. So, I'm really, I think that I actually feel that getting the consultant in relatively soon can help us with that citizen participation and getting the citizen input initially to figure out this, how do we, what kind of person are we looking for? What are the qualities? How do we see the interaction happening? And then put them to work with the outreach, writing the description, doing all of the outreach, and then certainly when it gets back to narrowing down to the candidates, that's when we would have us more involved and citizens more involved. So, I would like to kind of go in the direction, maybe in the next meeting. We don't have to do an RFP. Do we have to do an RFP for?
Professional services?
Yes.
I don't think so. Unless the charter has changed since.
Well, I think that we have like a $15,000 limit, but we can override that if we want.
Well, and again, I'm a little rusty, but it used to be that professional services, engineers, attorneys, psychologists, people of that sort, they were exempt. You can't low bid that kind of thing.
Right. Well, having talked to Brian, I think I am recognizing, the limitations of the consultant that we use. I mean, I want to be careful. I don't want to offend anyone. But I think that the person that we used before was a little bit more at a higher level. We had John Whitehofer, who had a lot of time to spend helping us do the search too. I don't think Kent has nearly that much time to spend actually involved in the search. We also had our attorney involved more in the actual search process. So I would like to look to one of these other groups that Brian had spoken with that offered a little bit higher level of service. I'm assuming there's going to be a little bit more cost. Do we have any idea? I think we paid Don Vermillion $10,000 is my recollection. And I would certainly think that would be a low figure, kind of in the low end of things.
Yeah, so, I mean, I will say that the two that I felt the most confident about that understood Yellow Springs and would add value were Mary Weissman, who I mentioned before, and then also Management Partners. They're in Cincinnati, and they're actually affiliated with the ICMA. And Kent had recommended them, and both of those groups were pretty much right on, just in terms of understanding, I think, the needs that we're looking for. They're both willing to provide proposals, and I think they would have those ready for our next meeting. And so it might be good to look at those. They have different ways that they can structure it. Mary Weissman mentioned that they often give sort of a discount of sorts to nonprofits and governments, so that's something to consider. But that would be my recommendation as we get a proposal for the next.
Where's Weissman located?
Dayton.
She's a Dayton?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's familiar with
That's the thing that, because she did, 2 or 3 searches for the schools?
3 for the schools, yeah.
So clearly she has an understanding of Yellow Springs.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I would be comfortable with seeking proposals from both Management Partners and Mary Rita Weissman.
Yeah, I should just mention about the others. I mean, I think a lot of these out-of-state firms are interesting and have a lot of skills, but I think that's going beyond probably where we want to be. And again, you know, what really resonates with me is this facilitator concept. I was speaking to the folks in Vandalia, and they had a similar kind of philosophy, because they're also looking for a village manager right now. And I think that's gonna jibe with what we want as a community.
Citizen comments? I'm Sue.
I'm Sue Abendroth. I would like to somewhat seriously give a quote from my husband, who has been known to say, in his observation, Yellow Springs is equally divided, 3% for, 3% against, and everybody else is in the middle somewhere. And in your manager search and the interviews and so forth, I would urge you to keep in mind that we are a fractious community and that I can't imagine any question which would give, or any candidate which would give 100% support from everybody here. So it's a matter that I think you all are going to have to be charged with providing that balance, because you have a responsibility for the whole village. Those of us sitting in those chairs have our own interests, and they may not be together. So you're to provide the balance, and we should, as citizens, I think, keep in mind that there will be complaints, there will be criticism, because we're very fractious and we're not all on the same page. Never have been, probably never will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Any other comments? Thanks. So, sounds like we're in agreement that we'll ask management partners and Mary Rita Wiseman to provide proposals. Mary Ann, is that?
Who will do that?
I think
I will.
one of the two, Brian and Jerry, are working together on that.
Okay.
And I think one thing that we will include, but we will want them to include in the proposals is a reasonable timeline of the process. We came up with one, but I'd still like to see what.
Right. And I will say, when I talked with these two, they mentioned that 90 days is possible, but it's really pushing it.
Wow.
120 days is reasonable. And if you looked at sort of what Jerry and I proposed as a potential timeline, we were thinking 5 or 6 months. So that sounded good. Not that we want to.
No, there are two comments I wanted to make. One was, I thank you very much, because you said that a viable candidate needed to be comfortable with social media. I was on Facebook for about a week until my ex-wife wanted to be my friend. I didn't like where that was going. I've never been back. And I like the 120-day timeline, because there's a trip I want to take in mid-May, and that'll get me out of here.
We might give you a little time off, Kent.
Thank you.
Okay, so that sounds,
What about this, on your timeline, you have a call for citizen participants going out now. Are we prepared to make that call, or?
I guess personally, I feel that any citizens that are interested in doing the work, I would like to hear who they are. And, you know, that we're still obviously deciding how that will work, and I think our consultant will inform us, but I don't see any reason to wait to ask for citizens that are interested.
Right.
So.
Okay. So how should we best do the call for volunteers? Just informally, or?
I mean, I think the same way we do for commissions. I don't know if I'm ready to put it in the paper. Because I would like to hear from these consultants how they typically work with citizen groups and how those are typically put together. You know, I do like the idea. I think the last time, the way we did it, each council member recommended one or two people to be on the committee. So I think in some respects that can provide a diversity. I think we need to make sure we're getting a broad range, and self-selection doesn't always allow for that. So, and I think that there's always going to be a way. There's always an avenue here for anyone that wants to be involved. There will be a public and maybe multiple public opportunities for citizens to be involved.
Absolutely.
And I think we would absolutely require that through interviews and other avenues.
Still in all, I think it is good to just put the word out here and now. If you feel called, you have a vocation to participate in this. It's also good for us to sometimes go outside of the networks that we normally connect to, and so I, for one, would love to hear from anybody who would like to be a part of that. So, and if I don't know you, it'd be nice to sit down and have a cup of coffee and get a feeling for where you're coming from and how you see yourself being a part of the process.
Great.
So I guess maybe I'll just mention, if there are citizens that want all council members to know they're interested, then I would suggest sending that to Judy Kittner, our clerk, an email, anything else.
Yeah.
But as Lori said, any of us could be approached about these issues.
Okay, great.
Thanks for that work, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good work. Thank you.
It was fun. Actually, Jerry took me out to the Winds to get it started. So
Wow.
That was great.
Okay, Jerry, I just be on the next committee with you.
We had a good time.
Next is questions for the McKee Group Forum on the CBE. I think first, I'll just go ahead and have Harry Lipset come up, just review the forum for a moment, invite people to the forum, and then we'll talk about any questions that we've come up with.
Thank you. Just want to announce for those few who haven't become aware that with the blessing of the council, the James A. McKee Association is holding a forum on the Center for Business and Education this coming Thursday, 3 days from now, or 4 days from now, however you want to count, at the Presbyterian Church from 7 to 9 p.m. Jalen Rowe will moderate. Jalen Rowe will moderate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Paul is going to tape the session, and it will be available for those to view on our Village TV station. The sessions will start with 3 speakers from Community Resources. One will talk about the history of the CBE, one will talk about the present situation, and the third will talk about the future. We will then have several speakers taking positions pro and con. I have been advertising in the paper for the last 2 weeks, looking for those speakers, and we need some speakers who are against the CBE. It's interesting to note that people will come to council and speak against CBE, but they won't volunteer to stand up before the village and speak against the CBE. So if you're interested, contact Karen McKee at 767-4641, and we'll be looking forward to talking to you. After the discussion from Community Resources and the speakers that are scheduled, then we will open the forum to the citizens, and people will be allowed to ask a single question or make a short comment, and then there will be further discussion. Village Council is going to attend, not as a council, but as individuals. Ken Bristol will attend to answer questions, and I've asked Laura Curlis also to attend because she knows some things about the preparations before Kent got into the chair. And as Karen announced, we're looking for some questions from the council for Community Resources to answer. Finally, I'd like to ask Denny Reeder especially and Lauren Miller to attend, because you seem to have at least some iffy comments. Is there any other comments? I'd appreciate having them. We're set up and ready to go. Everything is in order. And we will even have a speaker system with 4 speakers, four microphones. So everything is set. Any other comments? Well, I look forward to seeing everybody Thursday night at the church. And for Mr. Young, some time ago, I did an analysis of the village population, and if you discount Antioch College, the village population is retained remarkably stable from 3,100 to 3,300 from 1970 to 2010. In fact, it increased between 2000 and 2010 from 3,100 to 3,300. So the difference up till the 46 or 4,700 that we have when we both moved here is many of them.
That's helpful, thank you.
Any others?
Thanks, Harry. So questions, I mean, Mary Ann, the information that you had provided in the packet, the questions, I mean, a lot of those are probably, that's not all going to get answered at the forum. I mean, were those, do you have questions? I mean, have any of you developed questions?
Well, at this point, most of my interest is at this table,
Okay.
what the village is going to do. But I would encourage the McKee Group to allow people, I continue to feel that when we frame a discussion as pro or con, we miss a lot. And people tend to get rigid on one place or another. So I would encourage the McKee Group to allow people who maybe maybe they have questions about it, but they see positive things. I mean, to just open it up more than people for or against. I would appreciate
After
that.
the speakers that are scheduled finish speaking, we'll have a complete open forum, and anybody in the audience can come to the microphone and ask a single question or make a short comment.
May I've talked to some pretty knowledgeable people in town who have considerable business experience, and what I get from them are what the term nuanced approaches. So perhaps, for example, they may see positive benefits from the CBE and that they also have concerns. I'd be hopeful that some of those people actually would be some of the people that who would volunteer and that you would allow to speak for that, I guess it's the 3-minute or whatever, the time slot.
Letters in the newspaper for the last 2 weeks asking for volunteers to speak for 3 minutes on any topic that they chose.
Okay.
And nobody has, and 3 people have responded, 1 had to drop out.
So just for clarification, people should be aware that if they wrote to you and said, I am 98% or 90% sort of for or against, and I have these questions, but I feel pretty knowledgeable, would they be potentially somebody who you would say?
Absolutely. And I'll even be there early to entertain anybody that wants to arrive early and schedule themselves.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
I just wanted to mention, Paul Abendroth also told me that this will be also on YouTube. So, yes, yeah, we're on it. So if you can't attend and you can't see Channel 5, you can watch it on the web.
Right after all those cat videos.
Yeah, we should bleed in with all cat videos. So did anybody have questions? I mean, I know does anybody have specific questions that they want to provide ahead of time, or are we just?
Well, I feel like Mary Ann's questions were quite excellent. I don't know and I felt like she really just went through, because I do think Mary Ann has a pretty nuanced stance on this, and that her questions kind of get at everything that I have been thinking about or hearing from and feeling I needed more attention to.
Could I answer that?
Sure.
Can you, Harry, you've got
Give a copy of her letter to Jerry Sutton.
Yeah.
I am absolutely certain that
Yes, I did give, I initially wrote something for Community Resources, and then I modified it for the council, but I'll send Jerry what I had for council. I'll send him both of those.
Although I do agree with Mary Ann's comment that I think a lot of her points, probably as I'm looking through this really quickly, most of the things, and I'd say the first half of her document, really, CR can't answer. They really are about village policy, village stance, village approach, village involvement, that probably shouldn't be directly addressed in this forum, or won't be, but I think that there are ones that are more about development, how development happens, the building of buildings and things like that, that I think could be addressed in this forum, because they're more about development strategies and development partners and things like that. So, very good.
Well,
Okay.
perhaps the sense of what people think is a likely or reasonable timeline for the build-out time, I think, is raised in her first point. And that seems something that I would like some clarification on, because from speaking to other villagers, they were questioning that there was a kind of best-case scenario given in the original CR report. What's probably a reasonable or even a conservative estimate on what's the likely build-out time?
Yeah, and kind of related to that, I like the point about potential scenarios, just to kind of start looking at, what are some different possibilities.
And I think also, related, we also did talk about the fact that, or I suggested that during this part of the discussion, that we might talk about next steps and how we were going to handle these next steps. One of the things that I would like Kent to look at is really looking at a realistic, what our role really will be going forward, and what this idea, will we need to provide staffing? Do we need to have project management for the infrastructure? Do we need staffing for marketing the project? What taxes? Are there going to be tax implications? Anything that is going to be a financial, have a financial impact on the village, or CR, however that will be handled. Jerry?
Just a housekeeping note, my understanding at the last meeting, I was going to get written copies. Electronic would be preferred so that I can process it and don't have to fat finger it into my computer to get something legible out.
So you can send this to...
Well, yeah, I can send what I've written to Jerry, but it seems like there have been other
You
questions.
also wax
maybe-
philosophical, if that you want that addressed, you should provide that.
It seems like some other questions have been raised, and I don't know whether Judy can send those questions to
Yeah, maybe Judy,
Jerry.
do you feel like you've gotten the questions that were sort of fired off there?
What I have from you are that you wanted an indication about the next steps for the CBE. You wanted a clarification as to the role of council in the village moving forward, and whether there would need to be involvement for project management, any kind of staffing, any sort of tax implications, and then you wanted information on any financial implications for the village of Yellow Springs regarding the CBE.
But that's actually, in some respects,
was all.
those are separate. Those are separate.
To you?
That was what she was saying. She was really addressing to Kent. What I said was I was particularly interested in the realistic build-out time. And I don't remember what Brian said, but
I'm sorry, yes. Timeline for build-out, potential scenarios, and then you also have next steps.
do you think you can get those questions typed out and sent to Jerry and copied to us tomorrow morning? Yeah, and definitely copied us in case we feel like, wait, I didn't think that was what I asked.
Yeah, I'll send them actually out to all of you folks first in case you want to add something, and then I'll.
I'd like to add what Community Resources sees as the pros and cons of Community Resources becoming a CIC. And I didn't understand what you meant by scenarios. Can you say a little more?
That was one of your...
Oh, I said it?
Maybe you'd...
I don't remember how you worded it
You said
exactly.
council needs the funding the infrastructure, the cost involved for funding the infrastructure using 2 or 3 scenarios. Was that what you were referring to?
Yeah, that's the build-out time.
That's the build-out again.
Can I say something? I think that the designated CIC discussion, I think that's a discussion that happens somewhat from this table. I don't necessarily see that as part of this forum. I don't think I personally don't think that that's a discussion item for the forum. I mean, to me, the forum is more about getting information out to the community about the project. That's a business relationship between CR and us, I think. So we ready to move on? New business? Okay. Rules and procedures of village council. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. This is something we do every time there is a new council that comes in. We don't do it every year, we do it every other year. So I went through and I made a couple, the only significant change I made, and I wanted to run this by you guys, is related to the agenda and how and when things get put on the agenda. So on page 2 where we talk about meeting agenda, it says now items to be considered for the agenda will be accepted until 11 a.m. on the Thursday prior to the next scheduled meeting, which would mean that when we do agenda planning, we wouldn't know about those things, and those things could be added to the agenda outside of the decision of the president and the manager. I think we need to know all those items when we go into agenda planning. So I would say 9 a.m. the Monday prior to the next scheduled meeting.
My understanding of the process, or how at least we imagined it working, was people up till Thursday could send us items. Those items, just as they can send us letters on any topic, that would then go into the packet, and then we can talk about whether we want to consider them for the following meeting's agenda. But they wouldn't necessarily get on that agenda. In fact, they'd be unlikely to get on that agenda unless we felt it was some real emergency, but it could get into the packet.
Yeah, although this probably isn't clear then. Maybe we need to clean up that language a little bit, because, I mean, to me, when I read this, it does sound like you get on the agenda. You can get on the agenda, and I want to be a little bit more clear about that. I think we have time to work on this. You know, it's the first time that the rest of you have seen this. I know you've seen it. I'm not quite sure if Jerry has, or if anybody has any comments.
No, I haven't seen it.
You've never seen this? So
Unless I got it electronically, and I just need to go back and pull it out.
Well, you should have gotten it electronically, yeah. But I mean, did we do this when you came on council?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it's been a while.
Okay.
Although it says May 30th.
I was the only new one, so, yeah.
I remember we kind of did a pretty major sort of reorganization, because things were it was organized very peculiarly before, and so there were things that we sort of moved around to try to clarify, added in clearer headings to try to make it easier to find information about our rules, and we did actually work a little on that meeting agenda issue, because the way it was worded before really said, if you want to get on the agenda, just turn in something and you are definitely on.
Yeah.
Whereas now it says to be considered, and we accept them, but that doesn't mean we actually do anything. But we could, I think, write it more clearly.
But I think that the process doesn't allow, if somebody turns something in by that Thursday, the process doesn't really allow for them to know if they're going to be on the agenda or not. That's the problem, because the clerk can't really
That's
say, So, and she has to know by that Friday to put on the agenda. So the timing of it really doesn't.
Doesn't make any
Doesn't
sense.
make any sense. So
You
I
know,
think we've got to clean that
I
up.
think that was meant to be when materials needed to be into the clerk for items already on the agenda.
Right.
So if we just add a paragraph in there that says the clerk of council will receive materials regarding items on the agenda, or items
Already on the agenda.
which are on the agenda, that is, if you have a letter to go in regarding the CBE, which is on the agenda, I mean, that would clarify that. I think that first paragraph, you're right, it was speaking to when can you get something into the clerk, not when can you bring something.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Consider the agenda.
So I think we can reword that section.
Okay.
And, I think otherwise, I went through it with a fine tooth comb, and, I think it is pretty good.
The only other
Like-
thing.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I like that a lot of things are solid in this document about the process.
And then the only other thing I did, and again, we'll bring this back again to another meeting, but I got a little bit more explicit about explaining what emergency legislation is. It talks about a public hearing, but it doesn't really say what emergency legislation is. So I described that, so I thought that was important because it is confusing to people, so.
Good idea.
So I guess what I would say at this point, Sue, I don't want to belabor this, is Brian made some corrections or some comments, and I think, I know he sent it to council, I don't know if he.
It's in the
It's in the packet. If anybody else has any other comments, I'll send my comments to Judy, and then we'll just bring those to the next meeting and try to get this one wrapped up.
Yep.
Does that sound reasonable?
Do you want to track changes version for that next meeting, or do you want?
Yeah, let's do that.
Track changes, okay.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Okay. So we've got a new, the added agenda item of the rain barrels. Brian?
Yeah, and actually, I'd like Linda Radulski to just take it over.
Somebody open the door, please.
Oh, yeah, that
The
door
door's
can't be closed.
But as Linda's coming up here, I will mention, for those of you that don't know, the Human Relations Commission has really been putting a lot of energy into their mission. At the beginning of the meeting, I mentioned a few things, and the Rain Barrel Project is another exciting initiative coming from the HRC.
Hello, I'm Linda Radowski, and I'm the chair of the Human Relations Commission. I did bring copies of a printout. I heard Brian mention earlier on TV before I came about the event on Saturday, and so if you watch in the newspaper, it's being announced to the United Nations Day of Disabilities Awareness, so I wanted to make sure that you had that information that he mentioned. The actual day is, I think, tomorrow, but the celebration locally is on Saturday. And then I wanted to share some information. I'm really excited, actually, to share this information. And I'm going to pass to everyone a little packet. And I want to start with, on the top page, and I want to explain this to you because I think we may be a little midstream on this and then you'll become more aware. But I enclosed the, on the top page, just to give you an example of the process that we're using now with HRC. The very top of the page, I want to just read quickly. The purpose of the Human Relations Commission shall be to promote harmony among the citizens of the village and to work to eliminate prejudice and discrimination within the village against any individual or group because of race, religion, national heritage, gender, age, physical disability, sexual orientation, economic class. So this year we spent a lot of time on processing, and what we did was we developed a form that people use when they want to ask for some form of support. And we want to make sure it's in line with the mission. We want to know if they're collaborating, all these things. So I want to include this on the top to show you that even if it's a member of the HRC suggesting something, that we have to fill it out also. And we have to all agree that it's in line. At first glance, the Harmony Rain Barrel Project appears to be all about a rain barrel. However, it's a twofold project. It started out as a project to help maybe work with some local nonprofits and to kind of give them a little bit of a seed situation. And I have, quite frankly, for about a year and a half, 2 years, wanted to see the Yellow Springs Village area to have a rain barrel project. I really highly suggest that you go on to Google and Google artistic rain barrels, and you'll be amazed at how gorgeous they are. But I wanted to make it art with a purpose. So when I became the chair of the HRC, I really jumped into this rain barrel thing and thought, how can we do it, how can we do it? And it's really evolved, I have to say, to become more fine-tuned. So our first one's successful, but also the purpose has become more fine-tuned. It's always been a harmony rain barrel project. So ultimately, the first initial goal is to collaborate with the Arts Council to choose and secure an artist to embellish a rain barrel who sends the message of harmony. And however, then from there, we want to auction the rain barrel and the monies from that then to support something. As we all know, this summer we had a very horrific, emotionally distraught experience. And the issue of the challenges of persons dealing with mental health rose up strongly. And so that really became our focus. It's like, okay, rather than going general with nonprofits, let's look at mental health challenges. What can we do? So where this has evolved is then over the months, the next several pages you'll see, in 2013, President Barack Obama started an initiative, and it's called Community Conversations on Mental Health. And it's an initiative that involves local leaders. So we decided we're going to focus on that in 2014, where we're going to start some community conversations. Since then, also, the next page describes, in the state of Ohio, the next page actually describes the sessions of what they cover in the community conversations. What does mental health mean to me? What does it mean to our community? What are the challenges and factors we should consider? How do we support mental health for our younger people? What steps do we take in our community? So that's why we thought it was very important to try to access that curriculum in our community. The next and last page is about what's called mental health first aid. Some of you have become familiar over the last few months through conversations because of what happened with Paul Shank, what is called crisis intervention training. It's very well known now that it's something that the police officers, which they do take here, how to learn how to engage with a person who is in crisis with mental illness. Well, now they've really done a good job at the state level where they're offering what's called mental health first aid. And it's not just for police officers, although they're very highly encouraged to attend. This is for anyone who has interaction with someone with mental health challenges, who may be feeling volatile, who may be feeling suicidal, who's having difficulty with depression, engaging, anything along that line. You could be a community member, you could be a family member, a shopkeeper, you could be a frontline worker, a firefighter, etc. Each county mental health board trains 2 people to know how to bring this into the community and teach and work through. It's a total of 8 hours where you work with people. So our goal with the monies from the rain barrel is to provide that service. And we will either offer it through, if there's someone that works through Greene County, or we'll bring it in if we need to, whoever's available. But our mission from the Harmony Rain Barrel is to put a beautiful rain barrel up for auction in April of 2014, around Earth Day, to take the money from that and use it as seed money to provide good, strong increases in community dialogue and training in mental health.
Thanks, Linda.
Right.
Comments from Brian? Do you have any comments?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is, it's really exciting to see the Human Relations Commission just having so much energy behind this mission, and I think as a council, I can speak for all of us to say that we're excited about having these kinds of initiatives in the community. And I think it's really well thought out. So I appreciate this. I think one of the things that's important to us is, what the HRC is showing here with a process and forms and things, so that we can all follow along and make sure that that all these things are going to be great for the community. So thanks.
Any other comments, council? I think it looks like a great program. I don't know that. Yeah, I'm glad you brought it to us so we could know what it was, and I think this is terrific.
Yeah, good work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Manager's report.
John Eastman is working on the report for the cost and the process for prospectively refurbishing our existing water plant. That report is already a couple months late, and it looks like it won't be here until mid to late December. He's offered to come to the next council meeting, and frankly, I don't see the point in having him come before we actually see the report. So I would say as soon as the report gets here, we'll share it with you and ask him to come to the next meeting after that, if that meets with your approval.
That seems reasonable to me, yes.
When we approved the purchase of the sewer vac truck, we approved the purchase of the truck, but we didn't cover the financing cost. And I've gone ahead and signed the papers, but I haven't turned anything in. The financing cost for that truck over 5 years comes to $17,000. And I wanted you to know about it and have a chance to reconsider if you were so inclined, but it seems reasonable. It just, the company, it's a little awkward. The company that's providing the truck isn't doing the financing. That's coming through a separate entity, and they don't seem to talk to each other, and neither one of them does a very good job of telling us what we need to do. And it's only been a couple of days that the truck is here, and 3 days after the truck arrived, I got a note from the finance entity saying, oh, here are the 8 things you need to provide in order to get your financing. I've already got the truck. So, it's a little, anyway, just so you're aware, we,
Kent?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you saying 17,000 per year for 5 years? Or
No,
just
total.
17,000, that's all for that big?
I know. Where do we get that financing?
Well, 2.77%, that's, well, because we're tax exempt.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get very good financing rates. I'll take you off on a little tangent. We sell electricity for 15 to 20% less than DP&L. And I think we do a good job, but we're not that much better than DP&L. It's basically because we don't have stockholders, we don't pay dividends, and when we borrow money, we borrow it at half the rate that DP&L would pay to do infrastructure improvements and so on. So that accounts for that kind of difference.
I guess I don't understand. The cost of the truck is?
$250,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not 17,000.
No. The financing is 17,000.
Okay.
Yeah. 2.77% over 5 years. Yeah, it's a lease purchase. Okay. Emily Seibel, I believe, is here. We've talked, they are getting ready to start work on the lots on Cemetery Street in the spring, and they would like the village to be going ahead and actually building the water line that's necessary. So it's ready when the homes are ready for occupancy. And it's budget time, so this is the perfect time to bring this up and make sure the money to do that is in there. It seems to me the whole thing needs to sort of come together with John Eastman's report and the changes that need to be made in our distribution system, and this being one part of that. It can all be part of the budget process, I think, because financing's going to be the key. The water fund is pretty stressed. It's the one fund in the village that doesn't have a lot of money in it. So we're going to have to find a way, probably, because these are capital improvements, we probably will borrow money and raise rates and then use the increase in rates to pay off the loan over the life of the improvements. And that's normally the way these things are done. But Emily's request and the budget and John Eastman's report are all sort of converging at a propitious time. We are working with Glen Helen to do some land exchanges, and one element of that is we have agreed to give up some easements that we hold on Glen Helen property. And I don't foresee any need for those easements, but the original plan was to give up easements 3, 4, and 5, and both Nick Budis and Chris Conard and I have put our heads together. We think we need to keep number 5. And the exchange that we're contemplating was done by ordinance, and the ordinance says we will vacate easement number 5. So I'm going to have to come back to you with a revised ordinance. Easement number 5 is rather vaguely worded, but it looks to me like it's the water line that connects the water treatment plant with the system in town, and the easement that lets us feed electricity to the water plant for a power line. And we'd be hard pressed to do it without either of those, so that needs to be changed. So at your next meeting, we will have an ordinance. The former Kentucky Fried Chicken building is proposed to be used as a Mexican restaurant, and they would like a liquor permit to go with it. And they intend to transfer a liquor permit from Defiance to Yellow Springs, and apparently they're allowed to do that under state law because it's considered economic development.
Really?
Yes, really.
Wait, does that mean, so anytime
They have to have a permit.
they have
own
to
a
already own a
permit.
permit?
Yes.
Yeah, they,
Interesting.
yes.
Okay.
I thought that the number of liquor permits in town was established by
By
formula.
Moses, I thought.
Yeah,
you
by-
know.
by state
On the
law.
mountain, you cannot have any more.
They thought we could stand to be happier, I guess, so they're.
So that's who's been up in the building?
That's cool.
So that's who's been up in the building there on the south end of town?
The Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, it's, I think the company name is Senor Gringo.
Okay, so, because I saw a for sale sign, I saw people in there, and I'm saying, you know, are they giving tattoos or whatever?
No. And they're actually selling the building, which
That's-
I think
yeah,
is
that's-
actually
that's what
good
I thought.
news.
Yeah.
I think that's,
Okay.
Awesome.
My last point that I'd like to mention, Emily, is there anything I need to add to what we've? If you want to say something.
Hi, I'm Emily Seibel with Home Inc. And I'm not going to give a big speech. I just wanted to point out that the last 2 pages of the 50-page council packet are a synopsis of some of the updates, and so I'd encourage you and citizens to read it, because I think it gives a pretty comprehensive summary of where we're at, and then contact me if you have any questions.
thank you.
The last point is, last year, we had a contractor manage a swimming pool, and we'd like to do that again. We think there are at least 2 pool management companies within range who could potentially provide the service, which would mean that we should bid the contract. And I'm going to go ahead and start that process. Judy says you normally authorize that by resolution?
I think so.
Yeah, so I will come back at the next meeting with a resolution.
And are we going to get some kind of a report, year-end or season-end financial report from Dayton Pool Management?
Yes, we will, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are probably people in town, so you will be, who will have concerns or opinions about, about the issue. And so what you will be bringing next time will be legislation to send out the bids?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, Kent, were you going to talk about this piece about the skate park?
No, I was not. Go ahead.
Okay, well, what I do know is that committee that you referred to does have money in a bank account that is to be used for maintenance of the skate park. So I think it's just a matter of connecting.
When the skate park was originally built, I think Joan Chappelle was a pretty active participant in that process. And I saw her at the community Thanksgiving dinner last week, and I told her that the park, even though we'd repaired it and done a pretty thorough job this spring, has already been damaged again and is at the point where it needs to be repaired to be safe, and that we'd like to do a more long-lasting approach, which is going to cost more. And I'd heard that they had money, and she said, no, they didn't. So it may be a different...
Yeah, Matt Hausch.
Ah, okay.
I was going to say.
Yeah, they had done
Yeah.
fundraising.
And the last that I heard, there was 3,000 in their bank account for this purpose, and they were just kind of waiting to connect with the village on that, so.
We're talking a lot more. I mean,
Oh, somebody told me
we're
they
talking a
had
lot more.
50,000.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But I mean, just,
Okay, good.
that's a starting point.
Okay.
And actually, the original committee that I think Kent's referring to isn't around. I mean, and.
No longer functioning.
Yeah, that's been, right after. Now, the one thing that's on your report that I would like to address, because I'd like to talk to Lori about it, is the issue of Greene County Regional Planning. And whether we're going to contract, what we're going to do about that contract. I would like to hear from Planning Commission. I don't know if you guys are meeting in December.
No. Late. Yeah, it's too late to notice.
Okay. Well, then maybe if you meet in January.
January,
I mean, I'm sure that we can continue with a month-to-month. And that's what I would suggest that we do, is continue a month-to-month. There's just been some discussion as to whether it's really, whether it's really serving the needs that we have. We might need, should we consider another staff position or even a part-time staff position. So I just want to analyze, for at the end of the year, I want to analyze the service, analyze what our needs are, and I think hearing from Planning Commission would be important.
All right, well, it might be helpful for Planning Commission if there would be a year-end report from that office. That might be a good thing for us to have, sort of just reporting on the work they did over the year, sort of giving us an overview of how they spent their time. And then I think that would be a useful document to have to work from.
I agree.
May I say something? It might make sense to continue to use them until we get a new manager, and then, even renew for a year. So we get a new manager in place, then the manager can have that relationship, and maybe then, if we were going to hire someone, the new manager would have time to make that hire.
Okay. Just one last comment, because I'm still doing research on it. The former mayor of Bellbrook came in to do some lobbying, and it appears that the Greene County Commissioners are in the act of granting a several $million tax abatement to Costco to locate a new store. It's actually in Greene County, but it's also in Centerville. And he feels that that's unnecessary, and I'm not a very knowledgeable shopper, but it seems to me that retail space is one thing we are not short of in this county. So,
Is there, what would be helpful would be some kind of, I was interested in that item as well.
Okay.
Is there a document that we can look at that, because I feel like I don't get much communication from the county at all, but I also admit I don't go out looking for it as much as I perhaps should.
yes, there is a document. Getting it electronically in a form that I can actually see in print has been a challenge, but we're still working on it. I need Brian's help, maybe. So, and can you tell me how to turn off auto format on Word?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll be by tomorrow.
Okay. All right, good. I hate Microsoft. Sorry, that's all I have.
Okay. Judy?
Oh, here it is. One thing that I do need from you newly appointed to commissions folks is confirmation of your meeting days and times, because I need to get the whole calendar for next year into the Yellow Springs News in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to just make sure you look this over, and that in fact that is when your Board of Commissioners is meeting and the time that it is meeting and the place that it is meeting, that would be excellent. Other than that, nothing earth-shattering.
Judy, do we need to fill the alternate position for mediation? I noticed on your list. Is that?
You folks
Okay.
had put that forward to be discussed at a later point. You wanted to talk about mediation, economic development, a couple of other
Okay.
things. We just left it.
They meet on when they have to do a mediation. So.
Yeah, I think on that particular position is really more of a, since there aren't regular meetings, it's more like if there was a problem with mediation, that's kind of the point person. They don't really have, so there's really no need for an alternate.
Okay.
Okay, future agenda items, the next.
I have one other comment about the letter from Rick Waukee about the Energy Board. How he's interested in continuing as a board member. Well, how do we handle
I actually
it?
had that down for, I had meant to bring that forward. You folks had it. Normally, the boards and commissions stuff gets done in the second meeting of the month, but it doesn't have to. And yes, that, I had meant to bring that up, that Rick had expressed interest in the Energy Board. So.
I was assuming, okay, who is our representative? You are. Typically, if it's an ongoing person and they've been attending meetings and functioning well and haven't missed lots of meetings, that's often a sign that you need to have a conversation with them about not being on it anymore. If they've missed months of meetings.
This is about Rick wanting
Rick
to stay
Waukee,
on it.
Right, so what I was saying is, if that's the case, if they're fine and they've been doing good work, then you just bring a motion to council saying, I move
Can
that
I do
we...
that right now?
Well, is he replacing someone, or we?
Is there a vacancy?
No,
you've
he's-
got openings. You are
We
hurting
always
for
have.
people, so, yeah.
Oh, okay, so this is not the complete list, 'cause
Why don't we wait till the next meeting and just, I mean, is there,
When is their next meeting?
It's the second Tuesday.
the second and fourth Tuesday.
No, they don't meet on the 4th unless they're real active.
Okay, so he
Is there a
wouldn't, he wouldn't be
meeting
able to
scheduled?
vote and be part of that.
I was never told that
Quorum.
they weren't meeting on the second. I've been noticing it
Well,
right along. Nobody's ever
I've
let
been
me know
told.
that they didn't meet on that second Thursday.
Okay.
so-
is there a meeting?
So-
Tuesday.
Yes, there is going to be a meeting, and I'd like to, I would
Go ahead.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue to retain Rick Waukee as a member of the Energy Board.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Yeah, my point was that if it's somebody new who hasn't been on before, you usually bring another council person and interview them, and they turn in, so there's a little bit more of a formal process for somebody who's never been
okay.
on before. But when it's somebody who's continuing, we do it fairly informally unless there's been a problem.
Okay. Agenda items, future agenda items, so the RCAP LJB rehab plant report, do we want to put that on
That sounds like it's a January.
Yeah, the January, what is that date?
6th, I believe.
Okay.
5th or 6th, I'm sorry.
I think it's the 6th, right?
6th.
Okay, January 6th. The ordinance, is this ordinance going to be ready? The vacating the alley?
Yes, I'm gonna say yes.
Is it going to be
Say
an
yes every
emergency?
time, and
Is
I'm
it
gonna
going
say it again, darn it.
Is it going to be an emergency? Or are we just are we going to do
I
two?
don't think so.
I don't think it needs to be an
Okay.
emergency.
No.
So that'll be the first reading. We'll talk about the council, we'll finalize the council rules and procedures.
Karen, as part of that, would there be any discussion? We had talked about possibly forming some committees and working with Canton and some of our
I think
department heads.
what I would, that would be a pretty major
Yeah,
kind of change.
my concern about that is that, you know, we're looking at, we just hired a new finance director. We anticipate one of our other key folks retiring, and, you know, we're looking at a transition in about 6 months of village manager. So we got new people coming in and trying to get a better handle on how things are running. I know Laura had expressed that desire, and me and Kent had kind of talked about that. But you know, I'd like for us to take that up early in the year versus year go by and so forth. So.
Yeah.
Well, as we were talking, I was wondering about having a council retreat. We usually do have one, especially when we have new members, which is, I mean, a retreat is always a euphemism for a really long meeting. It's not like we go to Hawaii or anything, unfortunately. But I think that's the kind of thing that it might be really useful to hash out in a retreat setting, or at least sort of get sort of philosophical ideas about how we want to organize ourselves, and whether that would be a direction that people would feel comfortable with, and maybe having some more concrete information to work with about what would that mean, what would it look like, how would it be different from what we do now.
So when would we like to do?
Well, I mean, we can talk about it as scheduling a retreat. I mean, I agree with that, that it's just doesn't fit into that. It's much too, and I'm also concerned about the fact that at the previous meeting, we assigned an awful lot of commissions. And, I mean, we're going to be talking about people meeting on 3 and 4 and maybe more committees or commissions if we add yet another layer. And I think that we need to get these commissions resolved that aren't even meeting. And start to pare that down and start to get to realistically what should we be spending our time doing. So, and I think that does have to be part of a retreat. That can't be, I don't want to be sitting here. It needs to be a retreat discussion. So I'd be willing, let's talk about scheduling a retreat. At the next meeting, I would like Kent and Melissa to bring a budget schedule, budget discussion schedule. So we can get, I mean, we've got a lot. I mean, these first few months, we've taken on a lot. You know, we're basically committed, we're saying that we're going to do these next steps on the CBE. I don't know that we know yet what those next steps will be. You know, Mary Ann, maybe that is something that you could put together some ideas.
I will do that.
Okay.
You have the village manager consultant
Right,
proposals.
okay.
And if we have time, I've seen some things going around related to social media policy for the village. So if the schedule's not too full on December 16th.
I'd like to discuss that at a retreat. To me, that's a retreat
Okay.
topic, too. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
Yes, I
mean,
think so too.
I think it's a pretty big thing.
Okay.
And I would like have our attorney present at least for part of the retreat, if not all of it.
So maybe as kind of homework between now and this next meeting, we should really be trying to come up with what are these topics. We know those are two pretty big ones. If there's things that you already sense that you would like to have a conversation about, that you think would be helpful for us to speak about as a group, bring those things to the table next time.
Okay, I think.
Did you get an ordinance to keep easement number 5 in the village?
Oh, okay.
Review. And the resolution for the pool contract bids.
Right.
getting to be a pretty full agenda. Some of these things should be pretty, the legislation is pretty quick. I mean, we're already going on to 9:30, and I'm trying to keep meetings to 2 hours, so I've already screwed up my second meeting. So, and this is a pretty full agenda. We'll look at the next, when we do agenda planning, we'll look at whether we can make this happen. I think that the resolution on the pool contract could potentially wait till the next meeting, and maybe we hold that until we get some kind of a report from Dayton Pool to have. But our agenda is not going to get any lighter. It's just going to keep getting bigger. So we've got, because we have so much going on, so we've got to start to really tackle stuff. So, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Second.
I don't think we need a vote, or we'll do a vote anyway. All those in favor signify saying aye.
Aye.
Yeah, we do need a vote, it just can't be discussed.